Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the first ever virtual uh, online information session for licensing. This is basically just going to be about the licensing process, the licensing procedure. I tried to develop a few tools over the last couple of years to help students and mostly recent graduates with navigating the licensure process. I have a few resources I'll share with you, and what to expect for this next little while we're going to be on Zoom is I'm going to go over the application process, just how to maintain your license, ways to get your license. Want to navigate the state website with you a little bit. So there's going to be some things that you already know. Most of you might already know some of these things, but there might be a fair amount of new information for a lot of you. So if you know it, please be patient. You skip over it. Take whatever is valuable to you in this session and just leave the rest. But because we do have a little bit of a difference in type of student that we have here, some newer, some older, I'm going to go over everything, and some might be more relevant to some people than others. Okay. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to go through a PowerPoint, okay? And I have no idea how long this session is going to take. Hopefully not too long, maybe 45 minutes. So no hard feelings if anybody needs to leave sooner than that or what have you, but I'm just going to go ahead and share the screen. Let me get beginning. And let me do that. Okay, can everybody see the PowerPoint? Yes. So should I go on presentation mode or let's see. All right, I'm just going to do it the way I know how, which is like this. All right. So does anybody know what that's a picture of on the front? Come on, somebody dig deep. Anybody know their Greek mythology? So that's the Sisyphus, who was a king who was overly egotistical and arrogant, and was punished to roll a heavy boulder up a hill, and it would roll down. Every time he got towards the top, it would just roll back down, and he was condemned to do this for like eternity. So it's just a funny little way to say you might have a little bit of an uphill challenge, but don't get discouraged. So it's going to talk a little bit about who's in charge. So the hierarchy with who regulates licenses for LACs and LPCs. So the state of New Jersey obviously has the top. We have the Department of Law and Public Safety. Below them is the Division of Consumer Affairs. And within the Division of Consumer Affairs, we have the State Board of Marriage and Family Therapy Examiners. And they created a committee, the Professional Counselor Examiners Committee, who kind of oversees the licenses, who reviews applications, accepts complaints about counselors, all kinds of things like that. And this is the main website that we would navigate, all right? njconsumeraffairs.gov/PC. So that brings you right to the Counselor Examiners Committee page. And there's a bunch of links there that can bring you to all kinds of helpful information. So I recommend that you get familiar with the site and visit it often. So if you're, some of you may have done this in your internship classes. I know in my practicum class, I went over this with my students and gave them some resources. So maybe your professors did too, but in case they didn't, I'm going to just show you a little bit about the website. So this is what the website looks like. When you click on that link, go to the website, this is what it looks like. And so you can kind of, you read these alerts that tell you about, billing and fraud things and things like that. But then kind of scroll down here and you see the main parts of the page. This is contact information for the executive director. This is the phone number that you can call the state licensing board and ask questions. Due to the pandemic right now, they're less available than they usually are, so be patient with contacting them. However, Milagros is usually pretty responsive via email if you need to ask a particular question. So these links over here can be really neat to navigate and helpful for you to know. I'm just going to go through them very briefly because you can explore them more on your own time. I just want to give you a brief introduction. So they tell you flat out directly who the members are. And I think that's good to put a name to who the committee members are. They also give you names of the board members. So you see that they're LPCs, right? Licensed rehabilitation counselors too. It's good to know, I think, who they are to humanize the board a little bit and the committee. If you click on the meetings tab, that committee, the examiners committee, meets once per month to review our affairs, the complaints, the applications, supervision plans, all those things. So you can click on meetings and see when they're going to meet. I highly recommend anyone who just recently graduated or at the point you come to graduation, look at the meeting schedule to see when they're going to meet, because timing could be of the essence when you get your application in, right? So as you see with, because of the COVID pandemic, they canceled April, and originally they had March up here as canceled too. So I don't know if they kind of backtracked and did something, kind of retroactively, but March was canceled, April was canceled. Definitely expecting May to be canceled, but it's not. It's on as scheduled, so I'm really glad to see that. So you can view what their agenda for the upcoming meeting is. Click on, because these are open public meetings. You can attend these meetings. So this is going to tell you what they do. And for example, I saw it earlier. There's a part where they talk about, they're going to talk about applications. They're going to review of applications, review of proposed plan of supervised counseling experience, and things like that. So that's where they're going to discuss. They're going to have a list of applicants, your names, your applications. They're going to review it and suggest to the board that you get approved or not approved. Okay, we can go through the agenda. And you can also go back, this is good to do periodically too, go back to previous months and review the minutes. The minutes will obviously tell you, what they discussed. There's a lot of legalese, so sometimes it's not always an easy read, but they tell you some things that occurred, okay? And under like the legislative regulatory area, that can be really helpful. One reason I strongly encourage you to periodically look at the minutes of previous meetings is because the board often, or the committee, like they decide things according to like the relevant for the regulations or the laws, but they don't communicate them to us broadly. They don't send a big email announcement to say, hey, we've changed this or that, okay? So a while back when they changed the regulation that LPCs need to now get 1 hour of continuing education specific to opioid treatment. That was just something that was put in the minutes and put up on the website, but not disseminated widely to people. So you need to kind of just track that. All right, so that's the meeting area. Like I said, I'm going to try to go quickly through these. And this is disciplinary actions. So when you're licensed, if you do anything, significantly wrong, or if someone reports you for unethical behavior, you'll be reported to the board, and they'll do an investigation. And if they find you, guilty of the charges, they'll do some type of, penalization, consent order. There's I don't even know all the differences to all of these things, but there's consent orders, there's these public letters, and they go back, they never go away. So I was on here earlier and I saw something from 2002. on here. See at the top here, 2002. So your name would be on here permanently if you ever land on this. So I encourage you not to ever do anything unethical, anything that could possibly jeopardize your license or be reportable. So that's just what that looks like. And then a big piece of this is the applications and forms. When you click on that link, this is where you see the applications and other forms. So I'm going to go over the application a little bit later, but this is where you click on the application, and this application is the same application that can be used for all 5 of these things on the top right. You submit this application if you need to get permission from the state to sit for the NCE. That's if you don't take it through us. You know, some students don't take it while they're in the program, they take it after the program. You need to apply to the state to sit for the exam. And then you need to apply for your LAC. Then you need to apply for your LPC. And, you know, license of rehabilitation counselor is not applicable to our program, but that's another license that they regulate. And then licensure by reciprocity means if someone who's licensed in a different state wants to get licensed in New Jersey, they need to submit this application for that. So just to show you the application very quickly. And then there are other forms that are very relevant. In order to apply for license, you need to submit documentation of supervised counseling experience. You need to submit a plan of supervision. So the plan of supervision is for from when you get the LAC in order to get the LPC, right? So you get the LAC soon after you graduate, and then once you get the LAC, you need to submit this proposed plan of counseling experience supervised to count towards your LPC. And this one also, when you apply for the LPC, you need to show documentation of your supervised counseling experience, okay? So many things in this conversation are going to be a little bit intertwined and overlapped, so I'm going to try to help you make sense of it. Later on, when you submit the application, it's going to ask you for you know, who your supervisor is and what hours are. This is a form that you need to do in addition to that, okay? All right, so that's the applications and forms. Just quickly, they put together a top tips. So just kind of read through these. A lot of them are very self-explanatory, but you know, they are worth reading just to make sure you didn't miss anything. Most of this stuff I'm going to cover today. And then the laws and regulations. So here you have all these legal documents. So it's a lot to digest all at once. And not every single thing applies to us because some of it is for the rehabilitation counselors. But read through these laws to see what you need to adhere to as a licensee. Read through these regulations. And a lot of these regulations also apply while you're in school. So I need to be aware of a lot of these regulations for field placement, okay? Because some of them apply to supervision during your field placements, etc. They break it down pretty nicely into you know, professional counselors and associate counselors, what the purpose is, what your scope of practice is, you know, the application process. So this could be a really, really helpful document when you're going to apply for licensure. Go through this and see, you know, maybe just go through section subchapter 11 and see if you did everything that you needed to do, okay? Once you get the LAC, pull this document back up and review subchapter 13 to make sure that your supervisor is an appropriate supervisor, that the state will count that person as a supervisor. So these can just be a really helpful document. A, you need to follow them, adhere to them. So it's really important for you to just be familiar with them. But B, they could just be helpful to guide you on what you need to do, right? And then this is the next tab is frequently asked questions. Listen, I highly recommend you click on this and review it, because the FAQs happen to cover lots of little details that aren't really covered in some other places, or it might be hard to find in the regulations or the statutes. The FAQs can be really informative, right? So they separate it by general questions. Hey, who's the committee? How do I contact them? You know, when do they meet? Versus application questions. So some of you who are about to apply for the LAC, you might want to review this, and might kind of realize there's a few things that you may have didn't know. Trying to think of something that might stand out to me as hey, you might not have known that. Because different people come from different scenarios. They may have transferred into our program. They may have taken a leave of absence and come back to the program. So just take a look at these things to see if any of them apply to you. The supervision questions could be really helpful. This is one thing I wanted to point out. So you graduate, you apply for your LAC, and you get the LAC. Then you need to get the hours that are supervised towards your LPC. Well, who qualifies as a supervisor? This tells you all about that, okay? They need to have the approved clinical supervisor credential if they're an LAC. Anyone who supervises you needs to have specific training in counseling. It can't just be, it certainly can't be an LAC or an LSW. They need to have the full license. So LPC, LCSW, etc. But they need to have additional training specific to supervision. So for those that are unfamiliar, LPCs can get training to become an approved clinical supervisor, ACS. Social workers can do extra training where they get what's called the SIFI, S-I-F-I training, or you can do a graduate level supervision course, and that would suffice also. Our program, our department is modifying its curriculum to include a supervision course in the future. So everyone will be prepared to receive the to earn the ACS after that. So there's all kinds of information about supervisors in here that can be really helpful, and just general licensing questions. When do you have to renew? You may not even realize that once you get licensed, you do have to renew your license every 2 years. They call that a biannual period. So I'll go a little bit more into that later, but just to show you that they explain what it takes for you to renew your license every 2 years, the criteria, the requirements, all of that, including continuing the education hours, okay? So after you get licensed as an LAC, you need to continue to get education for the duration of the time you have your license, for your whole life, every 2 years. So we'll go through that a little bit later. So that's the FAQs. I really highly recommend you kind of review those. License verification, I'm not going to click on that. You can kind of look up someone to verify that they're licensed and see what kind of license that they have, all kinds of things like that. So it's a good website to know about. It's essential, really, for you to just go on it periodically and review the information. Does anybody have anything to say about anything I've talked about so far? Okay, let me see. Yeah.
Actually, Matt, I thought of something.
Hi, Lori.
I have to go back and look at it. But I know Dr. Cabiola had a presentation for the LCADC. In addition, I know I have a list of the requirements for that, but getting that license is a different website and everything too. It's probably in that presentation, but again, I just figured I'd throw it out there.
Yeah, that's at the certboard.org. Let's see if I can pull it up for you very quickly. Yeah, I'm not going to be talking about the LAC licensure during this. It's a whole nother presentation, but see what I just typed in, Lori? CERTBD.org.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that brings you up to the for the LCADC, certification board. Tells you all the different requirements and things like that. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Sure. Now where do I go? Where was it? Here, right? Okay. All right, so just briefly for those who may not be as familiar, like who can counsel and where. So counseling is a specific activity. So people who don't have licenses cannot call themselves counselors. Okay, so you need to be licensed as an LAC, LPC to be able to engage in counseling, professional counseling or associate counseling. The difference there is that associate counselors need to have supervisors. Okay. Professional counselors can have supervisors, it's just not specifically required, okay? And that, this is what professional counseling means, the application of mental health and human development principles. So that applies to any type of counseling related activity, except for like exempt activities like your field placements, okay? So requirements for licensure, you need to have the education, the field experience, pass the examination, and then get supervised experience. So in order to get your LAC, you need to have a master's degree in counseling, a program that has counseling in its name, right? You need to have the field experience, through field placements, clinical experience, and you need to pass the National Counselor Examination, the NCE. Once you do those three things, you'll qualify for the LAC. Once you've done those three things, you need to apply for the LAC. Go through this whole process I'm going to show you about in a few minutes. After you get the LAC, you then need to simply accrue a certain amount of hours working clinically in the field as a counselor with an approved supervisor. So basically, once you get to the LAC, it's like you made it. Now you just have to keep going for a while, and then you really make it, okay? So we're gonna go over the hours limits requirements in a minute. So here's the degree and educational requirements. You need to be part of graduated from a 60 credit program in counseling. 45 of the 60 credits need to be in 8 of the 9 core areas of counseling, which I'll list shortly. The degree title has to include the word counselor or counseling in the title. In the course catalogs for your program, your university program, it needs to say something about preparing students for the professional practice of counseling. And obviously the coursework has to be counseling. These are the 9 core areas within the field of counseling that the academics need to cover. And these should all look very familiar to most of you. You've taken a theories class, you've taken a human development class, you've taken career and group, etc. So those are the 9 core areas. And the program, your academic program needs to cover at least 8 of the 9 areas, okay? And then within those courses, you have the practicum and internship. Many of you have done these already, so I know that this is review for you, but just to remind or to inform those that haven't, you have 3 field placement courses in our program, the practicum and 2 internships. Practicum is not just internship light or just fewer hours than an internship. Practicum really is designed to be an introduction into the field. We know a lot of our students don't have field experience yet or clinical experience yet, so getting into the field through practicum is one way to be introduced. Needing 100 hours for the class, and 50 of those hours, minimum of 100, minimum of 50, need to be directly with clients. And for the internships, you need to have a minimum of 300 hours, and 150 of those at least have to be directly with clients, per course. And you're always getting, in field placement courses, you're being dually supervised. That's one of the, it's like the exemption that the state gives, that students who are in master's level counseling programs can counsel without the license. But one of the reasons is because you're dually supervised by a site supervisor at the agency or where you're interning, as well as getting group supervision in the classroom, okay, through your practicum or internship professor. So it's really good to get clinical experience, and you can apply the hours that you earned through field placement, your practicum and internships, towards your LPC license later, okay? So the NCE, the National Counselor Exam, is administered through the NBCC. They have a subdivision called the CCE, the Center for Credential and Education. And they administer the National Counselor Exam. It's the most widely accepted exam throughout the country for preparing counselors. So you need to pass the NCE. Most students take it while they're in the program with us because we kind of facilitate that process a little bit, but you don't have to take it while you're in our program. You can take it after you've graduated, but like I said earlier, you just need to apply to the state to be able to sit for the exam. Basically, you're showing the state, hey, I meet the requirements to sit for this exam, okay? So the NCE is separate from the CPCE, the Counselor Preparation Comprehensive Examination. That's an exam that we administer as a program to determine your eligibility for graduation, right? So the CPCE is administered every semester, spring, summer, and fall, usually the fourth Saturday of every semester, and students have a maximum of 3 times to pass that exam to be able to graduate from the program. You would not be able to graduate from the program if you didn't pass the exam. So be studious, study and prepare. So there's a few different roads to the LAC. Going through a CACREP approved program, like our program, is the fastest and simplest way. CACREP stands for the Council for Accreditation of Counseling and Related Educational Programs. They're our accrediting body. They're rigorous. It's a demanding set of standards and principles that we need to adhere to, and they're well respected. So our applications from our program often get very well received by the state because we're well prepared. We used to have a postmaster certificate that students could do in order to get the LAC, and there's another way that the state can kind of review your application with like other courses. I don't really know a lot about that avenue, so I'm not really going to talk about that. But like it says here, like our program gets approved pretty fast because of our rigorous academia. So then at this point you get the LAC. So is this going too fast, too slow? How's everyone doing? Can I get a head nod or an unmute and anything? Thumbs up, or we're okay? Okay, great. Thank you for all that responded. So this is now, you've applied for the LAC, you've gotten the LAC, and now it's to get to the LPC. You have a maximum of 6 years to get the LPC once you've earned the LAC, okay? And the requirement for the LPC is to have accrued, you have to have the master's degree, of course, you have to have gotten the LAC, and you need a total of 4,500 hours of supervised clinical experience to get applied for the LPC. So that 4,500 hours can be all post-graduation, or you can apply your field placement hours to that as well. So for example, some of you went through the program, maybe you should have a minimum of 700 clinical hours from your 100 practicum and 600 from internship. So you have a minimum of 700 hours. You have that, then you would only need to do 3,800 hours after you get the LAC in order to get the LPC. So if you did more than 700 hours, some students actually elect to take a 3rd internship, so 4 semesters of field placement courses, and they would get a minimum of 1,000 hours. And if they did more than the minimums, you can accrue even more than 1,000. In fact, as a student and as an LAC, the maximum number of hours you can accrue in 1 calendar year is 1,500. So it's extraordinarily rare for any student of ours, to do that, because you're really kind of maxing everything out, the entire time. But you can get a significant number of hours that you can apply towards your LPC later on. The caveat with that is that when you apply for your LAC, not to list your field placement courses on that application. And I'll show you what I mean by that when we go over the application. So again, after you've gotten your degree and you get the LAC, you have to be under the supervision of a qualified supervisor, those credentials. So post LAC, it's a minimum of 2 years to get the LPC. And again, that's really fast. That's if someone maxed out all of their field placement hours and maxed out their clinical hours while they're employed. So it typically takes a little bit longer than that, 2.5, maybe 3 years. So just kind of be prepared. And now, especially with this field placement hours being a minimum of 700, it's likely to take longer than the 2 years. 2.5 to 3 is, I would say, average. So remember that the supervisor has to be trained for their field. So like LPC getting ACS, social work getting the CIFI, etc. You need to submit a supervision plan to the state that needs to be approved before you can in order for the hours to count. It's always best to do those things in advance so that you know that supervisor and that supervision plan is going to be accepted by the state. And so you can see on the screen here the minimums, the maximum hours. So whether you're doing field placement as a student or working in the field as an LAC, the maximum number of hours that you can accrue earn in a week is 30 in a week, 125 a month, or 1,500 across the whole year. So if you look at, so there's 52 weeks in a year, right? They get the 1,500 by multiplying 30 hours a week times 50 weeks, which equals 1,500 hours maximum per year. And that's because there's reasons for these limits. I think the main reason is to prevent burnout. Sometimes people are new in the field, very gung-ho, very eager, want to do everything that they possibly can, willing to work 50 hours a week, whatever it may be. But the state is intentionally putting limits on that so people don't burn out too fast. It's a very real thing, burnout. So they limit it to 30 hours a week, and you have to take at least 2 weeks off in the year. You can't do 52 weeks at 30 hours a week. So if you're working a full-time job, which is typically 40 hours a week as an LAC, you can only count 30 of those hours, okay? So the minimum will be 750 hours a year because 750 times 6 is 4,500. So remember I said you have a maximum of 6 years to get the LPC from the LAC. That time period is a maximum of 6 years. 6 times 750 is 4,500. Everybody following? We doing okay? Okay, great. I like to. So just a couple little notes again about that is that your hours, this is a very common question. Your hours towards LPC will not count until you get the LAC. So even if you're working in the field after graduation, but like while the state is reviewing your application and meeting monthly, and maybe it's a few months until you get the LAC, even if you're working in the field, those hours will not count towards your LPC. And you have to be careful about what you do after graduation before getting the LAC too, because you're not licensed yet, okay? So, be careful not to portray yourself as a counselor, right? Their job title having the word counselor in it and such, right? I think this slide is pretty redundant. Just know some little details, like when you apply for, when you get the LAC and you're going to apply for the supervision plan and submit the proposed plan of supervision to the state, those documents go directly from your supervisor to the state. The state can be pretty particular about some things. Like this, they want to receive the documentation from the supervisor, not from you. And that's something that you'll see in those frequently asked questions that I showed you on the website earlier. Okay, that's like one of those little details that no one would know that, but it can really set you back if you sent in the proposed plan of supervision, and then like a month later they send it back to you and say your supervisor has to send this in, or you just lost a month's time, right? So that's why I emphasize that reading the FAQs, reading the tips, because you get nuanced information in there that could really save you time and aggravation, really some headaches. So, for example, when you become when you're applying for the LPC, you can email me or whoever the director of field placement is at that time, because the state requires a letter directly from us, from the department, to be sent to them that documents your field placement hours. You don't send that to them. They want it sent to us. They want it signed in blue ink, all kinds of little things like that. So just be wary of these little things, okay? When you're an intern or an LAC, the agency or whoever you're working for should document in their files, in the client's files, that your licensure status, okay? Because you're an associate counselor under supervision, or if you're in field placement as a student, you're an intern, that needs to be disclosed to the client and documented in their files. Okay? When you get to this point that you've gotten the LAC and you're working towards your LPC, keep supervision logs, okay? Keep weekly logs of your supervision meetings, okay? Remember how in field placement you have those hours logs? Do something very similar. There's examples you can find online. I didn't post one here, but you can just create one yourself, even just a template of your name, the date that you met, the name of the supervisor that you met with, their license, and like a couple of sentences about what you discussed, okay? Just to be able to document that you received supervision, okay? The supervision that you receive really replicates the supervision that you got in field placement, which is you need to receive 1 hour of supervision per week, face-to-face, individually with your supervisor. Across the year, remember you're supposed to get 50 hours of supervision in a year, because that's 1 hour per week, 50 weeks. A maximum of 10 of those hours supervision sessions can be group supervision, okay? So if you're at an agency that's only doing group supervision, you have to address that, because you need to have primarily 90%, or something like that, mostly individual supervision. So the supervisor is somebody who collects the fees. They're responsible for the treatment and the client's welfare. Ultimately, they're taking responsibility for your clients as you're working as an LAC. They sign off on your documentation. They serve a really important role. So I would be, advocate for yourself and be selective about your supervisor if you can. Important not to have dual roles with your supervisor, not a friend, or not your direct boss and stuff like that. If you are doing group supervision, has to be 6 or fewer people, and your supervisor can't have more than 6 supervisees in general. Even if they meet with you individually 100% of the time, they can't have 10 people that they're supervising. They can have a maximum of 6. So that might be a question that you ask your supervisor, or if you're working at maybe a big agency, that that they're supervising some of your colleagues too. Just kind of be mindful of that limit. And obviously that's put in for a reason, so they're not stretched too thin. You need to have different modalities with you're being supervised, direct observation, taping, co-counseling, at least part of the time. And like I said earlier, a minimum of 50 hours a year, and no more than 10 of those can be group supervision. So before I move on, does anybody have any questions about the supervision process? Anything to this point? that you want to pause and reflect on? You doing all right? Okay. So some recommendations: get started early, go to the website, get familiar with it, just navigate through it, understand the laws and regulations a little bit. If you're in the program, just make sure you talk with your academic advisor, that you take the appropriate courses, print the application out, start filling it out early, just so you're, familiar with it, comfortable with it. Keep really good records for yourself. I recommend you keep a copy of all of your syllabi, all of your hours logs, your supervision plans, all of that stuff. I mean, I have a binder from, I don't know, 10 years ago of like everything, just because, because the state can audit you. The licensing board can audit you at any time to say, prove that you did this continuing education, or, prove that you, got this education, or what have you. So keep records for yourself. And I'm in the position I'm in now with field placement director, I'm seeing a lot of alumni that haven't kept records, and it causes delays or complications for them. So I implore you to keep records for everything. Be mindful of the laws, understand, what kind of supervision you're getting and where you work. I recommend that you apply for the LAC like as soon as you graduate. All right, so there's a few slides here about the LAC application process. And I think that a couple of you are salivating over this part, because this is probably the most relevant for a few of you, especially the recent graduates. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the application on the website and go through it briefly with you, because doing that will cover a lot of what's on these slides, okay? Rather than just kind of read off of the slides for you. Can everyone see that? Okay, so this is the application. Let's just suppose that you're applying for the LAC. Let's suppose you already passed the NCE, you took it while you were in the program, you graduated, and now you're ready to apply for the LAC. I encourage you to fill it out ahead of time, have it ready to send on graduation day. And listen, I'm just emphasizing that for speed or efficiency, timely. Not everybody's in a rush to get the LAC. So I don't mean to kind of imply that kind of, pressure or anything like that. Most people want to get licensed as soon as possible. But if you don't, if that's not a priority for you, obviously you can apply at any time, okay? So make sure you check off the right box up on the top right here. Okay, that really matters. You need to get a passport-sized photo of yourself, a 2x2 square photo that you basically glue here. Don't staple it, don't tape it, don't paper clip it. I would just glue it to that. You can get passport photos at most of the, what kind of store, like the Walgreens and the CVS's, the pharmacy type stores. A lot of them have that. So a lot of this is self-explanatory. I won't read every page of this, but you need to send in a $75 application fee, obviously put the date. Then just fill out the information it asks for, okay? Put your demographic information in there. Check off which one you're applying for, LAC or LPC, or some people would, other programs would do the rehabilitation counselor. When you get to the LPC, you're gonna need to check off whether you did the 4,500 hours or you did 3,000 hours plus 30 graduate credits post-master's. That's what that's about, okay? Put your demographic information in there, your social, answer these questions about citizenship and child support. Notice every little detail, like sign it when they want you to sign it, date it when they want you to date it, write legibly, big and clear, so there's no delays later. Answer questions about any type of drug use or criminal history. It's really important to be honest about those things. Okay, and now these questions: have you taken the NCE? Let's, like I said before, assume that you took it while in class in the program and you passed it. So you click yes and yes. For those students who just graduated last week, we're in this pandemic period. There's some maybe some nuanced differences with the application process under the pandemic conditions. So what we're recommending is if you haven't taken the NCE yet, but I know some of you plan to, like in June or as soon as the testing centers are opening up, I would suggest clicking no, but then under here where it says when, write down scheduled for June 12th or whatever your date is, okay? The licensing board is aware that the NCE is being delayed. They're aware that the test centers are closed or very minimal. So I feel like that is more accurate to reality, is to document that you haven't taken it yet, but you're about to. Okay, put the scheduled for date, right? This doesn't apply to you, and then answer the questions about this legal stuff. Ever been convicted or summoned or anything like that? If you're unsure about any type of legal issue, I really don't feel like I'm qualified to give you real advice about that. You might need to consult with an attorney if you have something in your past that's on a record. Perhaps you could contact the state anonymously and just ask them in general, what would someone do in this situation? So just be honest about all of that stuff. These are just easy answers to questions to answer, all about your criminal background and such. Okay, and now this is for LACs. There are some differences between applying for the LAC and the LPC. LPC, you don't have to fill out this page, okay? Because you will have already done so for the LAC. But for your LAC, just document, what school you went to, the name of the program, and all of that. And it's asking you for your official transcripts. So what we recommend is contacting the Monmouth registrar's office and asking them to send it electronically right to the board. But you can also get hard copies delivered to the board or hard copies sent to you, and you can still send them to the board on your own. It's a few dollars to request a electronic transcript, and it's free for the hard copy transcript. And I recommend that you order several hard copy transcripts and keep some that are unopened for potential future use later. Has anyone done this part already? Does anybody know the cost of the electronic request? I'm looking at you, Nick.
Yeah, it was $3.50. I got it sent to me. I think when I went online, it said that Monmouth wasn't currently doing hard copies because of everything that's going on. Okay. So you have to do electronic.
Thank you, Nick, for clarifying. Yeah, there's going to be some little things like that the pandemic is changing. Under typical circumstances, that's what it could be. I'm glad you did that, Nick. Okay, so this next page is about your clinical experience, your work experience. Take a note that this is a page that you don't fill out if you're applying for the LAC, but you do fill out if it's for the LPC. A lot of alum have kind of struggled with, wait, what am I supposed to put here? I'm just an LAC. You don't apply, if you're applying for the LAC, you don't have to complete this part. But for LPC, you fill it all out for all of your employers, anywhere you got the supervised clinical experience, okay? And this is important. This is where you're going to document the total hours of supervised experience. So hypothetically, if you worked at one agency for 3 years straight, this is where you would write, say, 3,800 hours, because you got 700 hours from field experience, right? So you may write hypothetically 3,800 hours here. Total hours of individual supervision, it'll be 50 a year. So maybe it would be like whatever, 120 hours of individual supervision, whatever it ends up being for you, and total hours of group supervision. So maybe there were 3 times that the agency was short-staffed and they had to supervise 3 people at once. You put that there. Put the dates that you were supervised from, okay? Not necessarily your hiring date. This is when you started like counseling under supervision, okay? And then you just describe the job, and you do that for all the jobs that you had. Okay, this page is for LACs. If you're applying for the LAC, you need to complete this. If you're applying for the LPC, you do not need to complete this page, okay? Additionally, for the LPC, you don't need to send your transcripts in with this application. Okay? So there are some differences between the different applications. So I'm going to show you, this is a very, very commonly asked question of what courses do I put in here, okay? Some of them are self-explanatory, but I created a document that shows some good recommendations for you, okay? And I can email these documents to you. I know I gave them out to some people already. So this is just a description of what this is. This is a sample course worksheet for the LAC application. These are some courses these are electives that you could put into different categories, but this is basically what it could look like, okay? Not saying you have to do it this way. This is just a recommended or suggested, way of doing it. So be very clear that when you're filling this out, read everything, okay? They only want 45 credits, so 15 classes, right, in 8 out of the 9 areas. So even though I put something in each one of these 9 areas, don't do that. Only put at least one course in 8 of the 9 areas. I simply filled out all 9 because some of you might choose one area versus another, just to show you what courses could go in what areas, okay? So, for example, when you're filling this out for counseling theory and practice, you can put PC 525, your theories class, PC 540, your drug and alcohol class. For, helping relationship, you can put case conceptualizations, counseling skills, etc. Put the number of credits and put the university, every time, okay? So you'll notice that if you fill out these, say 8 of these, you have 13 required classes in the program. So that's 39 credits right there. So that means you'll just need to put, like, say 3 other classes, 2 to 3 other classes to get to your 45. So they might be electives like this, that's on the front page of this document I made here. So you can maybe, if you had family counseling or you took grief counseling, you took your drug and alcohol classes, you can put them in these categories, okay? So that's a very commonly asked question, and that's the answer to that question. Oh, wait, where were we? All right, so that's the course requirements for the application. Put your total down at the bottom there. Don't miss any little box that they ask of you, okay? Skip this entire page because that's for rehabilitation counselors. And then this is just your signed affidavit saying that this is you're applying, and you testify that everything you said is true. This page needs to be notarized, okay, by a notary public with their seal over here. So I encourage you to only fill this out in front of the notary. So they may want to witness you signing it, okay? So I just, hang on. I just looked up places in Monmouth and Ocean County that are notary publics, and there's like 20 places that came up on yellowpages.com that do it. Most commonly, banks will do it. Sometimes libraries will do it. The UPS store is a common one too. Does anyone else on here know any very common ones to get a notary public? Monmouth University, under normal circumstances, does it. And I think in the registrar's office or Office of Admissions. Alicia?
I was gonna say, just like the post office. I know you said UPS, but the post office also does.
Thank you. So that needs to get notarized, and I would suggest not signing it until you're in front of the notary public. And then this last page, this is kind of like an appendix here, is the authorization for a background check. So you need to apply for licensure, and you also need to get a background check done. So you can complete this form when you send in the application. And by the way, I have a whole, I see a lot of people taking notes, which is great. But I also want to let you know that I have a whole checklist that I prepared for you that looks like this. So, if you miss something, it's probably on here, okay? Just to let you know, I'll get to that in a minute. So with the background check, you complete this form, just know that it's a separate fee for the background check. See here, $18.75. So you'll need to send two separate checks to the state, both made out to the state of New Jersey. One for the $75 application fee, one for the $18.75 background check. So you need to get fingerprinted for the background check. The key there is don't get fingerprinted until the state tells you, okay? So you send in the application, the state will send you back correspondence saying we received your application and give you authorization to get fingerprinted now. Because I think basically what they do is a quick background check, and if you pass the background check, you need to go get fingerprinted. There are a couple of places in the area that do fingerprinting. And if anybody has done it very recently, please speak up. I know that there's a place on Cindy Lane in Ocean Township off of Route 35 and Deal Road. I just can't quite remember the name of it, but you can probably look that up online pretty easily. And I think there's probably a little fee for that too. And then that's it. And then you just sign the application, okay?
I can't remember the name either, Matt, but they moved.
Oh, did they?
They're now on 35. Going northbound in between Deal Road and West Park. They're like in one of those little tiny strip malls. Their name will come to me. Like I can see the sign in my head. I just can't remember the name.
Yeah.
It's Identigo, I think.
Yes, that sounds familiar. Identa something. Yeah.
It's Identigo or Co. I'm not sure whether it's a C or a G.
Yeah, there's an Identigo.
They're now on 35.
Yeah, there's an Identigo in Tom's River as well.
Thank you both. Thanks, Lacey. Thanks, Nick.
Welcome.
Okay, so that's the application. Are we okay to move on from here?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So when you're mailing in the application and then the background check form, do you mail them in together or do you have to mail them in separately?
I would mail the application and the background check with both paychecks or both fees all together.
Okay, thank you.
Because then they'll review your application, they'll review your background, and then correspond with you to say you can get the fingerprints now.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, that's a fair question, Nick. Hang on one moment. Just going to take a look real quick through these slides to see if there's anything else we missed. Okay, we covered all of this. And so just so you know, those are the application fees. When you get accepted and are approved as an LAC, then you have to pay the fee, the licensing fee of an LAC, which is about $180 and $250 for LPC. So these aren't cheap expenses. Okay, so I put together a little bit of information about like special guidelines for while we're under this pandemic, some things that might be a little bit different. So as of April, like, remember I was showing you on the website before the committee wasn't meeting in person. I already told you about the scheduled for date on your application, but now the state is requiring you to submit the application both electronically and in person, and by hard copy, okay? So mail it and email it, right? Here's the email address right here I can send you that. You don't have to scramble writing it down, but that's the email address to send it to. And this is direct information that I got from the executive director of the state licensing board. I wanted to make sure that even though the committee isn't meeting as regularly as they were, that students aren't going to be terribly backed up, that they are still taking applications and reviewing them. And he confirmed that they are. So the committee continues to accept applications. You need to submit the application after your degree has been conferred. So in the past, it may have been recommended, some people may have heard, oh, let me apply before I graduate. That's a no-no because you would be misrepresenting yourself, okay? You need to apply, I'd say like the day you graduate is fine or anytime thereafter, but don't submit your application before you graduate because then you're kind of misrepresenting yourself that you have your degree already, okay? So submit your application after your degree. The application fee, and the photo should be mailed to the office. So you can email everything, but also mail the hard copy. When you submit the application by email, it needs to be in a PDF format, and it needs to be titled with something like this: your last name, first initial, .lac.app. Okay? They also said to include a payment, copy of your payment as well. I interpreted that as maybe a photocopy of your check, kind of scan that into the email that you sent by hard copy. You can send your applications to Ms. Almeida, Agnes Almeida. If anybody has contacted the state, you may have spoken with her before. She can be very helpful. There again is the same email address to send your transcripts. So just a little thing for you to know is if someone does apply to sit for the NCE, like if you're taking the NCE after you graduate, and if you need to apply to the state to sit for the NCE, you then apply for the LAC after you've passed the NCE. You don't need to pay the application fee twice. You only pay the application fee one time when you're applying to sit for the NCE and applying for the LAC. Does that make sense? Hang on a second. I'm going to kind of amend this because that was quick. Okay. Let's see. Is there anything else I wanted to show you? Just some little, tricks of the trade, like to make your maybe application get approved a little faster than it may normally is. Like I said, this is review. Review the FAQs. Know that the board only reviews applications monthly, so plan ahead. Check the website to see when they're meeting, and try to get your paperwork in like well before that meeting date. Because if you kind of miss that meeting date, then you're set back another month, right? And just account for the time it takes to mail things. For the NBCC to send your scores, sending your transcripts to NBCC, sending your transcripts to the state, all those things. You can send things by certified mail, so you can confirm that they got it. It is unfortunate that at times things do get lost or misplaced, and to avoid some frustration for yourself. Under normal circumstances, like outside of the pandemic, you can even go to the committee office on 124 Halsey Street up in Newark and hand deliver your materials. I did that myself just to make sure everything was 100% correct, and it worked. Apply early. Just make sure that it sounds common sense, but make sure your application's complete and it's accurate. It'll be very frustrating for you if you realize that you put, June 12th, 2019 instead of 2020. Any little detail can get you set back. Get acquainted with the staff. I would call the state licensing board often when I was a student, and I got to know their names. They got to know me. I was friendly with them. I was not pushy with them, not aggravating towards them. Just be respectful of them. They don't have an easy job, and just be respectful of the staff, and you could maybe get good information that way. And just so you know too, the board usually takes a vacation in the summertime, so they miss at least one month. Usually it's July, but sometimes it's August, but it could be any time, June, July, or August. They miss a month. I'm expecting that they won't do that this summer, but they might. So once you've gotten your LAC, right, and then your LPC too, obviously to maintain your license, you have to adhere to all the laws, regulations, ethical standards of the ACA. Obviously, you always behave ethically. If you ever change your name or change your address, you need to notify the state right away. If you have a criminal issue, you get charged with something or convicted, you need to notify the state within 5 days. So you need to renew your license every 2 years. They call that a biennial period. And for LPCs, our licenses are renewed, LACs and LPCs are renewed November 30th of every even year. So this is a renewal year, 2020. So any year that's 2020, 22, 24, 26, the state will notify you, I want to say like 2 months in advance by mail to say that you need to renew your license. Just follow their directions. It's something that you do online. It's not difficult. But one thing that they're going to ask in your renewal application is, are you getting the appropriate number of continuing education credits? And this is what you need to do. You need to continue to get education postmasters after you graduate to stay current with the research and evidence-based practices and the important things going on in the field. And there's an approved list of providers on the state website. You can check that out. The NBCC is an approved provider, so anything that they do generally is accepted, for our license. Our program, Monmouth University Professional Counseling Program, is an approved provider. They call it ACES, an approved continuing education something. Lisa is in charge of that professional development program. That's part of something that Lisa does. That's why I don't know I can't remember the S right now. So all of those workshops that we do, like from our own presentations, the annual conference, you can get CEs with all of those kinds of things. You need to earn 40 hours of CEs for every renewal period, every 2 years. You don't have to do 20 and 20. They can be mixed up, different numbers throughout the 2 years. And if you do more than 40, the most you can carry over to another 2-year period is 10. So if you did 60 continuing education hours in a 2-year period, you can't carry over the 20 extra, but you can carry over the 10 extra, and that counts for the next biennial period. And this is on an honor system. So really, like when you're renewing your application, they ask you the number of hours that you did, or that, I think it's like you check the box that said you did at least 40 or something like that. It's an honor system, but they can audit you, like I said. So you need to keep all of your certificates of completion for your continuing education workshops that you go to. Anytime you go to an approved provider workshop, seminar, conference, you can ask them for a certificate of evidence that you completed that program. And again, I suggest keeping a binder with all of those things in case you're ever audited. I was audited, I think, last summer, and I just had to scan in all those certificates. I was actually audited by the NBCC for the NCC credential. You can get it audited by them too. So it's not a hard process, but just make sure that you have everything that you need. It's an honor system, so be honorable. I trust that everyone will. Wanted to just tell you too that on the ACA website, American Counseling Association website, counseling.org, you can find this really helpful chart for licensure requirements for LPCs across states. So this is kind of a big question that comes up for some people. Sometimes they move out of state, or you want to get credentialed or licensed in another state. This is what it takes to get licensed in Alaska if you'd like to move to Alaska. I hear it's beautiful. So that's on the ACA website. You can find that. Do your due diligence, do your research ahead of time. Okay, I already showed you the FAQs. Showed you the course worksheet. Okay, lastly, this is the checklist I created for people. This never really existed before, and students were or alumni were trying to navigate this, and I'm like, let's put it all down in one place. To my knowledge, this is 100% accurate. I will say, if anybody who's going through this process now or in the future notices that something is a little bit different, because things do change from time to time. Like the state likes it this way now instead of that way. So if you ever come across something that's not 100% accurate on this, I would appreciate it if you let me know so I can inform everyone properly. So this is the checklist for applying for the LAC, general guidelines and step-by-step process. If you ever are in doubt of anything, it's always best to just call the state and confirm that. So to get the LAC, you need to submit the completed notarized application upon your graduation or thereafter. You need to get the background check and the fingerprints. Wait for the board to let the state to let you know when they're ready for you to do that. Take that period out. Send your transcripts from Monmouth. You can order them from the Monmouth website. I think you do it from like WebAdvisor, Web Student, and select after graduation. Send one to the board and one to NBCC so that the NBCC can release your NCE scores to the board. Okay. Can be done electronically, and I always recommend you keep copies for yourself. So then you need to contact the NBCC to request that they send the NCE scores to the licensing board, and that's something you can do before graduating. Okay. I would suggest calling the board to make sure that they received your NCE scores and that they print it out and attach it to your file. Okay. Very easy for things to get lost or overlooked. So I think it's good to be conscientious about following up. Get the passport size photo to attach to your application. Make out the 2 checks for $75 and $18.75 for the application fee. When you're ready to do this, I encourage you to check the website again. Go to the application that's on the website to see what the current fee is, because the background check fee fluctuates actually. Sometimes it's $1 less, sometimes it's $1 more. So that's one of those little details that you may not know unless you realize that. So check the website. That'll be very frustrating if you sent a check for $18.75 and now it's $19, right? And again, keep photocopies of everything. I recommend you keep a binder or some type of filing system, whatever works for you, with a copy of the New Jersey regulations, the New Jersey laws, the statutes, ACA Code of Ethics, NBCC Code of Ethics. Create a binder or some type of filing system for your continuing education forms. Like keep a tracker of how many CE hours you've earned. You know, once you get the LAC, it's easy to kind of lose track of how many hours you've earned. So just keep filing systems for all these things, right? These are just a few like suggestions. Some of this came from previous graduates, previous alumni. I encourage you to keep calling the board if you have questions. 3 months is a pretty fast turnaround time. They don't usually get it done much before 3 months. So just know to expect a little bit of a lag time after you graduate until you get the LAC. You don't get the LAC a week after you graduate. So just want you to be kind of prepared for that period of time. You can call the board to see if if they received your application and if you're up for review for the next meeting. So when you look at the website, see when they're meeting, you can call them and say, hey, I see the committee's meeting on June 15th. Do you have everything that you need to review me, for June 15th? And if not, they can tell you what they need. After the meeting, you can call to follow up to see if they actually reviewed you and if they approved you. You need to send the licensing fee at that point. For LAC, it's $180. For LPC, I think it's $250. By the way, that is also prorated. So this is like a renewal year. So if you're getting your LAC this summer, you're not going to have to pay the whole $180. It'll be prorated to some degree, but next time you will. So, they encourage like doing group chats just to kind of, be in touch with each other. Like, hey, what did you find out today? What did Agnes tell you today? Anything like that can be very helpful. And when you're looking for jobs, you might find some jobs that say license eligible, which means like they'll hire you if you don't have the LAC yet, but it's pending. Just be careful that they don't take advantage of you by like overworking you, putting you in a position that you're not qualified for, anything like that. Okay, so just kind of have a little bit of a wary sense when you see that. Most places require licensure to get hired. So this is just the contact information for the licensing board and for NBCC. So for when you need to mail them your transcripts or send them information, that's that. Okay. Another thing with the LAC, with the continuing education, contact the board about this. You don't have to get the 40 hours of continuing education for like your first renewal period as an LAC. So say you get the LAC this summer, you definitely don't have to get 40 hours of CE hours by this November at the renewal period. And I think you don't have to for the next renewal period, but just kind of double check with the state on that. There's some latitude there with LACs getting CE hours. Okay, does that make sense? Oh, I'm sorry. And one little thing I didn't put on this slide that I was going to kind of put on here now is you need to have a minimum of 5 hours of ethics, 3 hours of multicultural training, and at least 1 hour of opioid-specific treatment. Okay. So when you do need to get these CE hours, just be sure that you get those minimums. Out of 40 hours, 9 of them need to be specific to these things. 5 hours related to ethics, 3 of multicultural, and 1 of opioid. Okay? And yes, keep that. What was I looking at? Oh, the checklist. Okay, that's for the LAC. And when it comes time in a couple of years, this might be handy to you how to get the LPC. There's, some fewer steps. You complete the same application, just make sure you check LPC. You need to do those proposed plans of supervision and submit the supervisor's CV and license to the state to just get that supervisor approved. There's another form of documentation of supervised hours. I showed you that on the website earlier. You need to get a letter from the director of field placement documenting your hours earned in your field placement courses if you plan to use those hours. Which reminds me, I don't think I said it earlier, but when you're doing the course worksheet, I'm gonna pull it up here. When you're doing this course worksheet in the application for LAC, if you plan to use your practicum and internship hours to count towards LPC, so you don't have to work as long as an LAC to get the LPC, do not list your field placement courses here. Don't list PC 595 or 680 because they can't count 2 times. They can't count dually. Okay. So there were some things for the LPC application that you don't have to do that you needed to do for the LAC. You need to get letters of recommendations from your supervisors. So if you had 3 supervisors, you worked at 3 different agencies across the 2 or 3 year span, then you need to get 3 letters of recommendation from the supervisors, just endorsing you as a candidate. And always send in the money. I think I talked about these already. You can't start accruing hours towards LPC until you've actually attained the LAC. I already told you that, and I think I told you this already. And I think that comes to this slide that asks if you have any questions or anything to discuss. So I can open it up to questions if anybody has any now, but obviously you can feel free to contact me if you have any other questions. Anybody have any thoughts?
A question I have is, so since with everything going on right now, like I'm not scheduled to take the NCE till like late June. So should I still send transcripts now to the NBCC, or should I wait until I actually take the test?
I would suggest, sending things now. Like, not everything has to get sent all at one time. Like, you don't have to try to coordinate everything to get there at the same exact time. There are some things that you can do, so you can send the application in now. You can send the transcripts now. Things like that. They don't all have to come at the same time.
So I'm having problems like even scheduling the NCE. like, so obviously I wouldn't send anything in yet. I'm constantly checking like all the locations, and I go through May. There was like one that was available, this weekend, but I wasn't prepared because I wasn't, it was like the next day after I checked.
Yeah.
But is like, I was just curious if that's like common for people.
I do think it is common. It's been hard for people to find testing centers that are open and some dates. I just, I think this is just an unusual time, obviously. I don't know that anybody can guarantee anything. You might want to email Dr. and Mrs. Burkholder for any insights that she might have, because she's more on top of the NCE than I am. I'm on the CPCE and she's on the NCE.
Okay.
But I've heard similar stories, Kim, from other alumni, from other students.
Okay.
So I know this is difficult, that it's kind of setting people back a little bit, but don't get discouraged. Just keep looking, keep checking. You might need to be willing to go far out of your zone. I know one of our recent grads went all the way to like Atlantic City to take the NCE at a testing center. So you might need to, kind of go out of your comfort zone a little bit geographically. But, if I have anything more to tell you, I would. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you, though.
Yeah. And so maybe continue to study a little bit, if you're not going to take it till June or July, maybe just keep it fresh, on your mind. Okay. Good.
I'm going to piggyback off of Kim's question. So I was scheduled to graduate in the fall, but I'm now graduating in the summer because we've got online classes. So I wasn't scheduled to take the NCE until the fall because that was going to be my last semester. So I'm going to the NBCC website in order to find the testing centers, correct?
Yeah, do all that through the NBCC. Yeah, and then
because at this point, I think I can't go through the school anymore to do it. I have to do it on my own, correct?
That's exactly what I was just going to say. Yeah, because usually you have to like apply in like March or April through the school to take it in October. So now you just have to go through the NBCC.
Okay.
Their website is fairly easy to navigate. Actually, I think I had it pulled up earlier, actually. Yeah, right here. I was looking up telehealth credentialing. And so, their website is pretty CCE though. Okay.
Thank you. And I can take that like once I start multiculturalism, because that's my final, that's like the last mandatory class I have. But once I start that class, I can take it whenever.
Yeah, I believe you can. Yep. Because you have all the other requirements.
Okay. And I don't have to take the PCE first or the CPCE.
You technically, I don't think you have to, but you probably will, because the CPCE typically comes before the NCE. Just because it kind of happens that way. Like when I do the CPCE in the fall, it's usually like a week or two before the NCE is actually scheduled, But your schedule date is going to be flexible now that you're doing it on your own. But I think it'll still happen before that.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I just wanted to throw out there too, going off of what Kim was saying about scheduling. I know I checked about 2 times a day. So I just took it last week, and I would check in the morning and there would be no dates. And if I checked later on that night, it was full of possible dates within the same day. So I don't know what that was about. But I would just say, like, be on your toes, because the second a date popped up is when I took it. But like I said, twice in one day, and there was dates within a couple hours, which was bizarre. And then they were gone the next morning.
Yeah,
that's
Emily,
really great to know. Thank you for sharing that, Emily. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. Yeah,
I had like the same experience signing up, Emily, where it's like I postponed it, then they made me postpone it again, and there was no dates available, and I tried to call, and they just said like, good luck, basically. And so I just checked, like I would check like every couple hours every day, and eventually like a date popped up in June, and I just signed up as quick as I could.
And part of that is because it's so unpredictable that like the testing centers are trying to open up where they can, so and if they open up, people snag it right away. So it's just very variable. I appreciate that you offered that insight, Emily.
And just to add to that, I had to change my location a couple of times because it had my address in wrong. So I will be taking it Manhattan in June. So be willing to drive, I guess.
Mhm.
Wow, you took it in Manhattan, Meg?
Well, I will be in June.
In June. Yeah. Good for you. Good for you.
And just another question. I don't know if you answered this yet. I had another call for a few minutes, but for those of us who are from out of state, are thinking of moving to a new state, would you recommend we apply for the state that we're moving to and just wait, or apply for your home state? I don't know. I'm trying to like look on the state websites and they're all very different and I'm a little like very confused.
Yeah, it depends. That's really a person-specific kind of thing, Megan. But if you think that you're going to practice in New Jersey at all, I mean, I think it would be good to have a license. Then I would suggest getting the license here. But if you think that you're going to move pretty soon and just be practicing in the new state, then you'll save yourself some money by only applying to the other state. Would say that New Jersey's license is fairly well portable. Like license portability is a huge topic in the counseling field because trying to make it uniform across all the states. Like you said, there are some differences, but Florida has some. It's a little bit sometimes hard to transfer into Florida, but New Jersey's portability is pretty good track record. So your education, your NCE, the approval by the state. That you might have to do a couple little things that the licensing board of that particular state wants. But that's why you just check that list. Did you see? I don't know if you were on the call when I showed you how on the ACA website there's a whole list of licensure requirements for professional counselors. So you go on the ACA website at some point. Just navigate the website. You can find this. Can you guys just hang on for one quick minute? It's so rare and welcome in 2020 to get an actual knock at your door. Just used to getting spam phone calls, and so this is good. Sorry for the interruption. So Megan, you saw that?
Yes. Can I just search it on the search bar on the website? Or
go to counseling.org. www.counseling.org. That's the ACA's website, and maybe search in there.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. I'll see if I can, maybe save this file and email it to you also.
Yeah.
Is everyone still getting their Monmouth emails? The people who have graduated?
Yeah.
Yeah. I apologize that this was so short notice for you. I emailed CounStud, the listserv, and I guess you weren't on there, so I had to email you individually. I'm glad some of you made it on here. Anybody else have any other thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I have a question. On that application, it says you were talking about, have you taken the NCE, and then you put your date. And then right underneath that, I believe I saw, if yes, did you pass, yes or no? But so I just took it last week and I only have my raw score. So what would happen as far as that goes?
I think the official answer is, to click yes when you know that you passed. I think I'm about 1,000% sure that you passed the NCE, Emily.
Okay.
So, I mean, that might be something that you want to just check with the state, and, or even NBCC. And under these circumstances, if I were in your position, I would advocate for myself a little bit and say, listen, everything's gotten delayed because of the pandemic. This is my raw score. I know, based in relation to other scores, that this is a passing score, et cetera, et cetera. But just advocate for yourself a little bit to see if you can kind of just put on there. But, officially, probably can't check it off until, check yes until you know that you passed.
Right.
So you got the word from NBCC that you passed. But I don't know if the state's offering any flexibility with that under the pandemic conditions. I just don't know if they are right now or not. So I think to me that would be like worth a call, or emailing Milagros,
Okay.
the Milagros Corioza, the executive director.
Thank you.
Sure, sure. Yeah, that I feel for you on that one. I got that question from someone else about a week ago, and you know, I don't want to tell you to do anything that is, you know, unethical. So obviously, just go by the book. But I also do feel like these are extenuating circumstances, and you know, you're trying to not delay your, you know, application, you know, any more than it already is. So I think self-advocacy is okay right now. Any other thoughts coming to mind for anyone? Anything pop up? Any questions?
Thank you for
Mark?
putting this together. This was great. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate that. You're very welcome.
No, it's overwhelming. It's nice to have it all in one spot, all checklisted out, and all the links to everything where we could go and search more in depth for different things. And I'm sure it took a lot of time. So I do appreciate that very much. So thank you.
I'll neither confirm nor deny that it took a lot of time. Yeah, you're very welcome. And I appreciate you saying so, Laura. I very much appreciate that. And that was my goal, was to try to filter the information. I know it's a ton of information, try to bring it down into like understandable bits. And I know for me, checklists really help, you know, step-by-step procedures, you know, being able to check it off and say, okay, I did that. This is what I need to do next. So that's what I tried to do with the whole field placement process, because I know like the handbook is a lot and it's a lot of information for people to digest. But I thought that maybe some of these like documents, these samples, these examples might be helpful just to show you. So I appreciate feedback. If anyone has any other feedback, was this helpful? I'm not looking for accolades. I'm asking seriously, like, was it helpful? Was it worth your time? We obviously went about an hour and a half right now, I think. So I appreciate you staying on and listening to all of this. That makes the time I took to put this together very worthwhile. Would you improve it in any way? Was there anything that you were looking for that you didn't get? Any feedback?
Can you send us your PowerPoint and the checklists?
Yeah.
It was fantastic. That's the only question I have. That's all I need. So I don't pester you any further.
I'll neither confirm nor deny. I don't know what
I
you're
know when
talking
you
about.
see my name pop up on your email, your eyes roll back in your head.
Not once. Not once.
Thank you,
I'm
Matt.
available to help whoever can. If I can help, I will. I think most of you know that about me already.
It is greatly appreciated. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. That makes it worth it for me that it's appreciated. So I appreciate that. So I recorded it because I'm considering posting it to the department website. I might put this whole like little video on the website, just so that everyone can access it, so that you can all access it. I'm not sure about that. I'm going to talk about that, you know, with Lisa and such. But in any case, I should be able to just at least email you the PowerPoint and those documents. Can I just ask you, anyone that's interested in that, can you just please send me an email, just saying, can you please send me X, Y, and Z? That would just make it easy for me to stay organized and not send people things that don't want it. And remember who to send it to. Is Mark still on the line? I think he. I'd be really interested to hear his feedback as an upcoming student. He's starting in the summer. How all that was for him. I think that was a lot. How about you, Nicole? You're kind of midway through the program. How does all that sit with you?
I thought it was all really good info. Some I knew and some I was really confused about, like filling in the core areas. I had no idea what to do for that, so that was extremely helpful. Not too much went over my head, so I thought it was very good.
Good, good, good. I'm glad. Yeah, some of those things that can really save you time is like, not knowing which pages to fill out for the LPC and for the LAC, which ones you don't have to fill out for either one. That can just save you a little bit of time and aggravation. All right, let me go to any final thoughts, comments, questions. If we're all set to bid adieu, I will tell you this. Go out, do your best, be yourself, be your best that you can be your best self, be your best counselor, represent the profession well. And know that consider me a resource, consider the department a resource. If you have other questions, just email, okay?